Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another video on my channel. Make it an amazing day. Make it an amazing day. I'm your host, Johan, and today we're going to discuss, well, you might have guessed something from the title of this video. It's a little different than that. Let's talk about it. I don't have to explain the times we're in. I don't have to explain it at all. I mentioned about the system I use, which is just a Roku box and internet service. And so I get my news from YouTube. And I could just look at the title of a video and say, okay, that's all I need to know. I don't have to watch it or watch others with the same topic. I think what's consuming a lot of people now is what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, the assassination attempt on a presidential candidate, former president. So there's all these videos out there now. I stream through them. I go past them and I see the titles. I'm always looking for something, not always. I look at times for things that have depth and weight, that truly affect society or life as we know it. And that particular incident is one. So rarely do I get involved in politics or issues of that sort, what's going on in society, unless it's important. And as I was going past all these videos, a channel that I watch, Ron Paul's Liberty Report, put a video out, and it was titled, "Why We'll Never Know What Happened at Butler, PA." And I was like, there it is. I didn't have to watch it. I didn't have to watch it. In a way, we're reversing not time as we know it, but the times that we live in. And what I mean by that is, you could call them threats, you could call them probabilities. You could say this might happen and that might happen. And there are a lot of things going on right now. Not just in society. I mentioned this before. We're in a cycle of the sun where there are a lot of solar flares and CMEs. It's a cycle, not the end times. Storms are more brutal. In a sense. Because the earth has its cycles. And what I've noticed is there's 50 and 100-year weather cycles, and where no one was living at one time, there are towns now there are villages there are cities there that were flood zones, that were prone to be in the path of terrible storms. Before I decided to make this video, I was thinking about the original 13 colonies. And the main reason to settle here was to enjoy more freedoms, to not be constrained by rules and regulations. And it came to a head. And it led to the Boston Tea Party. And it led to a great war. To be independent of those forces that were affecting those people's quality of life. And we're there again. I am not suggesting that anyone say, okay, it's time to have a revolution. In the sense of the revolutions that followed the original 13 colonies' independence. I'm not saying do that. I am a proponent of this revolution, however, and it's not a call to arms, it's a call to minds. M-I-N-D-S, a call to minds. These changing times, people are going to be affected by them in a horrible way for various reasons. And then there are other people that aren't going to be affected by them in that way because they will have prepared themselves. Let's look back in history. It's no secret that there were periods of time where societies, thriving societies, disappeared. Or their way of life was altered due to certain events. The Egyptians is one example. That society disappeared. And if you look back at the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, the Copper Age, they came in, and then when that influence diminished and there was something different on the horizon, those societies were changed in a tremendous way. Their way of life was altered tremendously. And that the truth is that there were people there in those times that used common sense and had a balanced mind, and they survived, and they managed to exist with an altered society. And exist they did. It's no secret either. Empires rise and empires fall. The British Empire, for instance, is one. And now here we are as the American Empire is facing monumental pushback over certain policies. You may think it's the end, but it's not. It's the end for people who aren't stable. It's the end for people who aren't balanced. It's the end for people who don't use common sense. It's the end for people whose call to action is violence. It's the end for them. And so they're going to respond that way. And then there's the other people that decided to prepare, to make preparations for the changes that are coming. Again, there are earth cycles, sun cycles. Empires have risen and fallen. Societies have changed. In those ages I mentioned, iron, copper, and brass, and so forth. We're in what I call the electric age, fueled by fossil fuel. And fuel now has become the commodity that's being manipulated by the powers that have the most fuel. Did you do what I've suggested in a lot of videos and research your ancestors? From ancient times and times of antiquity, I should say? Did you research your ancestors? Did you learn about their culture, their traditions, their way of life? Did you? They lived a simple life. And no, don't interject if you know who my ancestors were, the Vikings, and say, well, they raided and did all of these things. I don't care what civilization it was or government. They all did it, and they still do it in one way or another. Some of my colleagues in the North Scholastic field are divided about what our ancestors did when Christianity swept Europe. Paganism, as it's called today, but the meaning was different back then. And if you don't believe me, search the etymology, the root of paganism. It's not what it's transpired to today. So people were practicing the old ways, rituals, traditions, ceremonies. And when Christianity swept in, rules were made by those in charge of that faith and said, 1, you cannot buy, sell, trade, or own unless you convert to Christianity. Your marriages are null and void unless you get married in the Christian faith. All these things. Not all Scandinavian people who were living outside of that area in Europe did that. But some did. They made adjustments to continue their livelihood. We've been under threats like that before in history. This is nothing new. This is nothing new. The difference is, if you're glued to the television, you see it over and over and over and over and over again, 24-hour news. In the 60s, when I grew up, there were news bites here and there throughout the day. And by 11 p.m., the television went off till the morning. There was nothing on television. But now you're being fed this stuff. And it's affecting the way you think. That's the difference between people that are living today and our ancestors. When our ancestors saw the writing on the wall, so to speak, they made adjustments. Some gave in and sided with the powers that be and said, okay, I'll convert. Others lived their religion, paganism, behind closed doors until eventually they were threatened with death if it was found out. But they survived, and their tradition survived. Their culture survives. As a matter of fact, it's obvious to me that these old ways are being revived. They're being revived because those people survived all these conditions. These new, you could call them threats, but the new way of life, which included giving up something that they enjoyed at the moment. But not all of them. What do we enjoy at the moment? What are you enjoying at the moment? I don't know how it is in other countries. I'm sure it's not that much different, but people in this country are attached to material things. People in this country are attached to technology. And the simple life doesn't include that. I don't like the idea of going green at all. I don't see how it's possible to have 100% success. Who could afford those vehicles and those batteries when they need to be replaced? Where are the charging stations? All these things. And you could survive in your house with solar panels on the roof, but guess what? The standard of living that's coupled to that isn't what you're having now with free flow electricity. I grew up in a time when you wanted to make toast, you had this little metal device that you put the toast on and put it over a fire, coal stove or gas. People don't have patience for that. So I am promoting the old ways, the ways of our ancestors, the ancient ways, times of antiquity, those ways. Simplify your life. But you can't do all this. You're not going to make this drastic change unless you're balanced inside. Balanced. If you've been following my videos, I don't know how many times I've said at some point we stop blaming other people for where we're at in life and take responsibility for our own actions. In the coming era that's coming upon us, you're not going to survive blaming others. You're going to survive when you take responsibility for your family and make the changes necessary to a simple life, as our ancestors knew. A lot of people are going to get caught off guard. A lot of people are going to get caught off guard because what's feeding this, let me call it a movement today, to amass all these different material things is money. Same with technology. What will you do if technology is canceled because of a solar flare that affects the infrastructure? What are you going to do then? And if the infrastructure has been compromised, just buy a solar flare and electricity's shut down, you're not going to be able to run your vehicle, car or truck. Now you can imagine what scenario follows that. I'm not here to be a fearmonger. I'm telling you, empires have risen before and fallen. Societies have risen before, and then something happened and their way of life changed drastically. But these are different times. There's no, in my mind, other alternative than to live a simple life for what's coming or may come. There's no alternative but to calm yourself down, calm your mind down, and take another look at the way you're living. Make it an amazing day. Make it an amazing day. And not just that, make it an amazing life. It's your choice, it's your decision. So have a good life. Keep your heart kind. And keep your mind calm and clear. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for listening.